Panic had set in. Researchers were frantic. There was a buzz of activity, not born of excitement, but from sheer, widespread fear. The Scarlet King was coming. Nobody at the Foundation knew when or even how the monstrous multiversal tyrant would spring free and bring endless chaos with him, but everyone knew it would be soon. They'd all had the same warning, the same nightmare. In fact, it wasn't just the Foundation either. The entire world had shivered in their sleep, sharing in the bad dream of the destruction that was yet to come. The personnel of the SCP Foundation were on high alert. Of course, the organization had been aware of the impending threat of the Scarlet King for longer than almost anyone else, but that was part of the problem. Through some anomalous dream had by everyone on Earth, now everyone else knew. The Foundation was less interested in uncovering the source of the nightmare, and more trying to counteract its potential side effects. That was what potentially offered the Scarlet King the power he needed to enter into reality after all. The more people knew about him, tried to understand or to find the eldritch entity, the more power he was able to obtain.
"We have an army!"
One member of personnel chimed in during a frantic debate.
"We have an almost unlimited fighting force that are specially trained to handle anomalous threats, the MTF." "Are you crazy?"
Another argued.
"The MTFs are certainly not unlimited. At any rate, the Scarlet King might be one of the most powerful beings in the entire multiverse. How can our troops, even our anomalous units, even hope to stand against that? You're proposing sending our people into a slaughter."
They'd all be wiped out in a moment, one of the other researchers concurred. "We need to be focusing our efforts on the amnestic rollout. If we can distribute enough to the population, we can wipe their collective memories of the dream from the other night. They'll forget, and that should slow the approach of the Scarlet King."
"Slow him, maybe, but it won't stop him,"
the first retorted.
"Full-scale retaliation is still our best option. Even now, while we try to come up with a strategy that could be enough to draw him in, we're willing him into existence as we speak." What about deploying another SCP?
Came a voice from the edge of the group. It belonged to junior researcher Jake Harrison, a relatively new member of the Foundation who had been reading up on files related to the Scarlet King. He knew that in trying to understand and come up with a way to best the murderous multiversal warlord, that he was inadvertently feeding him power. But Jake seemed to have stumbled on the one solution that everyone else had overlooked. There was already another anomaly that might have been perfectly suited for defeating the Scarlet King. "What do you suggest, Harrison?" one of the other researchers spat. "You really think something like 682 would be willing to work with us and destroy the Scarlet King? That's absurd."
"I heard 682 is meant to be one of the Scarlet King's children," another remarked. "No, not 682,
Jake argued, turning to the researcher that had just made a comment about the entity's supposed children, a group of anomalies that we believe to have been born of the Scarlet King himself.
"But you're on the right track.
We use SCP-999. The group of researchers looked dumbfounded at Jake. He couldn't tell if they were about to yell at him or they would all burst out laughing. To his surprise, they actually looked to be considering his proposal. It was widely believed that SCP-999, the adorable blob of orange slime known as the Tickle Monster, was actually the final child of the Scarlet King.
"That's not entirely implausible,"
one of the researchers answered.
"SCP-999 is believed to be an ultimate force for good that could, in theory, defeat his father."
The Scarlet King is meant to be unparalleled chaos. The two could cancel each other out, another theorized.
"But the Tickle Monster, sorry, SCP-999, it's an infant, a child," someone else pointed out. "Even if it could one day beat the Scarlet King, it's nowhere near strong enough to yet. We might have days, minutes even, before he arrives, and I don't know if 999 has the power to stop his father."
"Then what if we could make him stronger?" Jake replied, a risky idea brewing in his head. "Surely you aren't suggesting..." Suddenly a loud rumbling rang out, like an earthquake, only much louder. And instead of coming from the ground below, the noise was coming from the sky. The Foundation's researchers raced to the nearest window or ran out of the buildings they were in to turn their gazes upward. Scored across the sky above was a deep, blood-red crack, a wound in the fabric of reality itself. It was huge, almost covering one horizon to the next, and everyone looking at it knew what it meant. That crack in the sky heralded the approach of the Scarlet King. Junior researcher Harrison spent the next hour impatiently trying to get a hold of someone,
anyone who could approve his proposal. The O5 Council were already swamped with suggestions for how to stop the Scarlet King, each one contributing to his rapid approach. Eventually, Jake made it through and spoke directly with a representative, an underling for the O5 Council. "Listen to me," he urged. "I know this isn't your department, but I need someone to sign off on this, please. The lives of everyone in this reality could depend on it." "What are you proposing?" "The Clockworks, SCP-914, Jake answered. "We place SCP-999 inside, speed up the process, and make him strong enough to stop the Scarlet King." It was an astronomical gamble, using the anomalous improvement machine, constructed of a multitude of clockwork components. Cogs, gyros, gears. SCP-914 was a device that could be used to enhance or refine any object placed inside its input booth. Depending on the setting, items could be transformed, destroyed, or vastly improved using the Clockworks. Rough setting disintegrated any test subject, while coarse dismantled it to its base components. One-to-one replaced any item with an almost identical copy. Then there were the fine and very fine settings. The former would cause 914 to improve any item, and the later capable of the same, but with one key difference. Very fine would refine an object even more, usually by giving it anomalous properties. Jake had read up on SCP-914 and knew that the Foundation had permitted researchers to conduct tests using the machine. However, following a catastrophic test, nothing organic could be tested in SCP-914. That was a strict rule. No biological organism or living thing of any description was to be placed within the Clockworks. It was Jake's hope, however, that desperate times called for desperate measures. Surely, with the Scarlet King almost upon them, the Council would waive the restriction and allow SCP-999 to undergo refinement. The O5 Council representative's voice cut out after Jake made his suggestion. There was a long pause. Even without the pressure of incoming calamity, the silence seemed to extend for a painfully long time. Suddenly, someone else spoke up in their place, a modulated, distorted voice. It quickly became clear to Jake that he was talking directly to a member of the O5 Council. Under a different set of circumstances, he might have felt honored, but right now it was almost as scary as the threat of destruction by the Scarlet King. "Listen closely, junior researcher," the council member said on the other end of the comm line. "You may think you understand SCP-914. You may even think that it might aid us in stopping the current crisis, but you are far, far mistaken. You will cease this current course of action immediately. Your proposal has been denied." "But wait!" Jake protested. "Surely it could work. I know biological material isn't permitted inside the Clockworks, but that doesn't mean it can't affect living matter. SCP-999 is a living organism. If he really is everything we think he is, and we just put him through the refinement process, he could—"
"No, researcher Harrison," the voice barked. "Using the Clockworks would mean we risk losing 999.
"What are you talking about?"
"You appear to have a fundamental misunderstanding of SCP-914, junior researcher," the council member chastised. "It doesn't merely improve upon existing objects, but replaces them with a new version it creates. If we were to place 999 inside, the creature as we know it would be gone forever. And if it really is capable of stopping this catastrophe, we will then have lost our ultimate weapon against the Scarlet King."
But
Jake tried to say. "Enough! Every second we waste discussing our options, the more power the Scarlet King is able to amass."
"So why don't we stop talking and actually do something?" the young researcher shouted, giving in to his frustration and losing his temper. The comm line went dead. There was no one on the other end anymore. Another rumbling sound rippled through the building, even louder than the last tremor. Jake ran towards a nearby window and looked out in horror. It was already too late. The red crack above had split open wider, and like a tidal wave, hordes of nightmarish creatures came spilling out, raining down on the world. And commanding them, sending forth his minions in a flood of destruction, was the Scarlet King himself. Jake was done waiting for permission from the council. He sprinted as fast as he could through the facility, past panicked researchers fleeing for their lives, while security officers and MTF troops abandoned their posts in the futile hope they could survive the end of this reality and all others. Jake forced himself not to pay attention. He needed to find SCP-999. The playful blob was often free to roam around the facility, improving the days of anyone it encountered. So all Jake needed to do was find anyone who seemed happy despite the catastrophe, and SCP-999 wouldn't be so far away.
Outside, the world began to resemble the nightmare that everyone had experienced the night before. Cities were burning as monstrous abominations tore through innocent civilians and ripped buildings and cars to shreds, reducing every nearby standing structure to little more than rubble with frightening speed and ease. The Scarlet King and his armies had been waiting for this moment for centuries, millennia, eons even. And now nothing could stop them from unfurling pure, indulgent chaos on this reality. They had their work cut out for them, subjugating and destroying the entire multiverse, but that isn't to say they weren't enjoying it. People across the Earth were being killed in droves in the name of the Scarlet King. He diverted a significant portion of his forces to attacking the SCP Foundation itself, while the boots-on-the-ground MTF troops, the ones that had remained loyal, were usually a formidable fight. They were no match for the eldritch armies of the Scarlet King. The Horde began to set free other anomalies kept locked up in containment, either by accident when they stormed the Foundation facilities, or intentionally seeking out their cells to spring them. Some SCPs tried to stand up to the Scarlet King and fight back. The likes of the Plague Doctor, the Spectre, and SCP-2800 all tried their best to ward off the oncoming attacks of the Scarlet King's foot soldiers. They lasted longer than those who decided instead to run away, turning heel and trying in vain to escape the destructive reach of the Scarlet King. Even anomalies like SCP-106, who could escape to other planes of existence or pocket dimensions, weren't safe. In hiding, they were only prolonging the inevitable. The Scarlet King would find them all. No corner of the multiverse was safe. And of course, some SCPs thrived in the catastrophe. Creatures like SCP-682, the infamous hard-to-destroy reptile, found themselves free to exact revenge on the Foundation and humanity at large. Of these, not all the anomalies gave away their allegiance. 682 in particular was too busy killing anything it came into contact with, whether they were human or part of the Scarlet King's army. But other SCPs gladly swore fealty with the Crimson Cosmic Conqueror, forming alliances with the entity responsible for setting them loose and joining the massive monstrosities he had unleashed. And yet, in the midst of all the chaos, the calamity, and the millions upon millions of deaths, one junior SCP Foundation researcher was still searching for the wholesome orange blob. Jake Harrison had put all his chips on SCP-999 and eventually tracked the Tickle Monster down. The building around him was crumbling, attacks from the Scarlet King and his minions bombarding every second. As Jake ran into the mess hall, his eyes instantly caught sight of the ball of orange slime, cowering under a table. Hey, he whispered, hoping to coax it out. It's okay, I know there's a lot going on right now. Hell, it's the end of the world outside, but if you come with me, I think we can fix it together. Come on, little guy, what do you say? As if in reply, 999 immediately leaped up out of its hiding place. Jake caught it in his arms, instantly feeling a wave of calm wash over him thanks to the Tickle Monster's calming, anomalous effect. He tried to stop himself from fully succumbing to the good vibes that the gelatinous creature provided. After all, he still had a job to do, and time was short. The Scarlet King and his invading army might have seemed, for the most part, to be indulging in wanton destruction, decimating cities and Foundation sites, killing humans left, right, and center. But Jake figured that if there was any method to their madness, then SCP-999 would be at the very center of it. Not even the Scarlet King knew for certain if SCP-999 really was his offspring. Maybe he had heard the rumors and wanted to reach the Tickle Monster just before it had a chance to stop him, if it even could. If the Scarlet King believed even for a second that his supposed son stood a chance at defeating him and ending his reign of terror, then he'd waste no time hunting the orange blob down. His army of nightmarish creatures would comb every corner of the world until they found SCP-999. Although they might not think to look inside the Clockworks. Placing the smiling, slimy SCP in the input booth, Jake fiddled with the controls for SCP-914. He'd never performed any experiments using the machine before, but it was all pretty self-explanatory, throwing the dial to very fine. He gave a moment's pause, looking at the adorable anomaly in the machine. The warning from the Council rang in his ears. If he activated the Clockworks, he'd in effect be killing SCP-999. Either that or the Scarlet King would do it himself when he found the Tickle Monster. Neither scenario ended well. Then the thundering sounds of the massacre outside got louder, screams coming from innocent people who were being caught in the Scarlet King's carnage. There was no question about it.
If what Jake was about to do really could stop all this mayhem, then it was worth replacing SCP-999 to do it. With a deep breath, he flipped the switch. The clicking and clacking of the Clockworks components whirred into life were drowned out by the approaching tremors. Something was coming. No, he was coming, Jake thought. The very fabric of the building around him started shaking, brickwork and cement crumbling and falling apart as a large hand, fingers ending in pointed crimson claws, wrenched open the roof with ease. Looking up in horror, Jake saw that the sky was a dark shade of red. Towering over it, a colossal crimson-clad warrior looked in on the frightened researcher, horns protruding from its head. Maybe because SCP-999 was still nearby, the blob was offering him some kind of positive mental protection. Otherwise, the mere sight of the gigantic monstrous being above him would have driven Jake and any other mortal mad. The Scarlet King was upon him.
Where is he?
Came a booming voice that sounded like hundreds of screams overlaying each other. The Scarlet King's gaze seemed to shift slightly, turning from Jake as he lay helplessly on the ground to look at SCP-914. The machine had fully activated and couldn't be stopped now. Either through foreknowledge or some kind of cosmic sense, the eldritch monstrosity seemed to know exactly what the device did.
No! What have you done?
The Scarlet King roared. He raised a gargantuan fist and brought it straight down through the air towards Jake. He couldn't run. The Scarlet King was so vast in size that there was no way the researcher would be able to evade the oncoming strike. Jake raised his arms in a futile attempt to protect himself, despite knowing that the Scarlet King's fist would likely plunge through the very surface of the earth below. But then again, maybe the junior researcher just didn't want to watch. There was a pause. The strike never came. It was only when Jake built up the courage to open his eyes that he saw what had happened. A long tendril of orange slime had reached out of SCP-914, forming a protective barrier between Jake and the Scarlet King. Suddenly, with all the force of a tidal wave, the newly refined SCP-999 came pouring out of the Clockworks. The Tickle Monster's mass had increased. He was thousands, if not millions of times bigger. Swept aside and out of harm's way by the orange slime, the junior researcher looked up in amazement as SCP-999 reached up into the sky, able to look its supposed father face to face. The Scarlet King recoiled in horror as the Tickle Monster engulfed him, pulling the cosmic crimson plunderer into an embrace. As they hugged, there seemed to be a change in the Scarlet King. The eldritch monster had spent all his time since the dawn of creation as a cruel, nihilistic conqueror. He had killed and enslaved, devoured ancient gods, and slaughtered entire planes of existence in his quest to annihilate everything. But now, held tight by his gelatinous son, his heart shifted. It was as if the Scarlet King's eyes had been opened, and he could see the beauty of creation. The sheer overwhelming goodness of SCP-999 enhanced by SCP-914 undid the evil of the Scarlet King himself. Only it didn't stop. As the orange slime engulfed the Scarlet King in a hug, he began to be unmade. The Tickle Monster, without even trying to harm its father, had been made into such a beacon of pure positivity by the Clockworks that the Scarlet King simply ceased to exist. He was unwoven, not killed, but rendered without any purpose. He barely even felt any pain, but at the same time was removed from this and every other universe. And still, it didn't stop. The newly recreated SCP-999 spread across the world like an orange flood. The Scarlet King's armies, the other SCPs, even the few surviving human beings were all wiped away. SCP-999 spread to every corner of the Earth, turning the blue planet orange as he coated it, purging every single scrap of negativity, all hatred, all cruelty, all evil, even that of the SCP Foundation itself. The entire world was unmade by the Tickle Monster, not out of malice, but so that nobody anywhere could cause the Scarlet King to reemerge. At the same time, all that was left was a planet-sized ball of orange slime, lonely spinning through space. Now go and check out SCP-999 the Tickle Monster for more information on everyone's favorite orange blob of wholesomeness. Or, Children of SCP-001 the Scarlet King. Is SCP-999 really his son? And explore their bizarre family tree.